I think we got enough, everybody.
Yeah, I think we got enough.
I think we got enough to do this thing where we talk about movies. Ladies and gentlemen, joining me on the line, he is from Cinemablend.com, and his name is Mike Reyes. Hey, Mike, what's going on?
Oh, not much. Keeping the British Crown. Controlling the British Crown, keeping the metric system down, that sort of thing.
I think we got enough to start this thing.
Do you think so? I think we're ready.
I think we need to go back to, 90s radio. What's up?
No, they didn't have that back then. It was just more the usual sound reels.
Oh, God. What better times. Anyways, Mike Reyes from Cinemablend.com on the line with me right now as we dive into the world of movies. Just a little caveat this week. We are recording a little bit early. It is Wednesday, so if we miss any big stories or whatever, you just know that we had to record early this week. Anyways, Mike has seen the big movie of the week, and it is another Transformers movie. Mike, talk about it.
I got to see this one so early that you may see some ads with my name in it, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because I went and saw, it was literally the first screenings that they did for this. And what was really cool was, it was out in New York. So sometimes with these screenings, they'll do something where, it's not flashy, but the thing is, they had food and drink at this.
Okay.
So it was really cool to go and yes, it was really cool to just go and it really felt like kicking back and watching a movie on my own time instead of just, doing it for work. But part of that is also Transformers Rise of the Beast is probably my favorite one out of the entire run.
And just to preface that, you haven't been a big fan of the other ones, correct?
Yeah, I've been okay with the Transformers movies. I think that a lot of the Bay ones are kind of just really overstuffed, and they were obviously trying to go for slick action and sex appeal and stuff that you look back at when these movies were first coming out, like 07, 09, and it's that was kind of the style of the time. And then when they hit Bumblebee, when they made that movie, they kind of realized, okay, we have to kind of shift gears here. And with Bumblebee, they started making more family-friendly sort of – it also felt like more loyal adaptations just in tone and in style.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're getting with Rise of the Beast. It feels like they've learned the lesson that Bumblebee is – that's the model to go after now. So now we're in 1994, and we've got two young people played by Anthony Ramos and Dominique Fishback teaming up with the not the Decepticons, but the Autobots. Teaming up with the Autobots.
That'd be awesome.
That would make an interesting movie. That would make an interesting movie if you had just a whole story where it's focused on, it looks like in the beginning, it's the kid befriending a Transformer, and it's yeah, but they're friends with the Terracons or the Decepticons, and it's not good.
Yeah,
but anyway,
yeah.
This is more of the tradition where Optimus Prime and friends are teaming up with humans, and we get to finally meet the Maximals. We do meet some Terracons. There's an amazing voice cast in this movie that boasts Ron Perlman, Liza Koshy, Peter Dinklage, Pete Davidson, who steals so much of this movie as Mirage. It was really cool to see. A friend of mine kind of hammered it on the head when we were talking about it on Twitter. It's oh, wow, it's kind of cool that a Transformers movie has the human bonding with the Transformers that can talk. And that definitely helps because Pete Davidson just understands what he's doing with that role. And he said that he wants to make it a tribute to Bugs Bunny and the Mask. And that energy's there and that spirit is there. And he's just so much fun with it. But this is definitely, it feels like a summer movie you probably would have seen in the 90s. And I mean that in a good way. And that's something else that these recent Transformers movies have sort of been doing is they touch on nostalgia, just like Bumblebee felt like, an 80s Amblin movie.
Yeah.
Rise of the Beast has shots in this movie that there are scenes that look like they're straight out of Independence Day. And I like that feeling. I like it's just a lot of fun to go see this. I'm going to see it again in 3D, so we'll see how that turns out. But as far as the movie's concerned, yeah, it's a blast.
Mike Reyes from Cinemablend.com on the line with me right now. A couple things just about this. And For those of you, and this is, like I said, recorded on a Wednesday before, the entire plot and stuff is on Wikipedia right now for the movie.
Of course it is.
Minor spoiler, and you don't have to say who, but another franchise is kind of hinted at in this.
Yes. Oh, okay. So, spoilers, folks. If you have not seen Transformers Rise of the Beast, the next couple minutes are going to get heavy because G.I. Joe is now in the chat. G.I. Joe has been tied into the world of Transformers, and I did the junket for this one. So part of my interviews was I got to sit down with the producer, Lorenzo de Bonaventura, and he's been part of the Transformers movies since the beginning. I believe he's also been a producer on the G.I. Joe franchise.
Okay.
And I even asked him, like, why now? Why did you guys decide to do this? And he's like, well, we've been trying to do it for a long time because the fans are always like, oh, you're going to do it? When are you going to do it? And then he was like, you know what? This felt like the best time because of stuff that ties into the plot. So they actually did. They pitched the idea. Stephen Caple Jr., the director, he said when he turned in a draft of the script, he suggested that they introduced G.I. Joe and everything. And they actually filmed 2 different versions of that ending.
All right, cool.
We've got a story that's going to be going up next week that talks about why they did that. But yeah, through thought and consideration, they decided it was time to go Joe.
Now, I wonder if it'll be the franchise we've seen already or if this is something new, because I'm still confused about Transformers on whether this is part of the Michael Bay universe or if this is something different.
It is part of the Michael Bay. That's another thing that I talked to Lorenzo about, and he said it is the same timeline. Bumblebee to last night, it's all the same timeline. And the challenge is, since they're going back, they can fill in the gaps about, how Optimus Prime became an ally to the humans, because, you go back to Bumblebee, he's basically saying, no, I don't want any part of this.
Yeah.
And then by the time you get to meeting Sam in Transformers, it's like, oh, wait, I'm totally a part of this.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've never, and listen, I'm a fan of the Transformers series. That first one, God, did that take me back to my childhood. But it's always been, let me try to say that again. I've never been able to place where it is in that universe. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not an easy conversion.
Yeah. It's because of the fact that they decided to jump back so far with Bumblebee. It really was a question of, okay, are we forgetting the Bay movies or not? And the answer is no. It's just that they're in a different place in time that they can do other stories.
Okay. All right, cool. So Transformers Rise of the Beast, a good one to see. We're probably seeing it on Sunday. We're probably going to go on a double date, believe it or not.
Nice. Prioritizing Transformers over Spider-Man. That's cool.
There's part of me that wants to throw out there, be like, hey, you guys would you rather go see Spider-Man instead? Because truth be told, I would rather go see Spider-Man, but I like the people that we're going with. So it's kind of like, it's one of those. It's like, speaking of Spider-Man, let's go over to that universe, or should I say multiverse or Spider-Verse. Across the Spider-Verse, its opening weekend made about $120 million. That was domestic, right?
I think so.
But
which a lot of people are saying it overperformed what they were estimating.
The reason I bring it up, and Mike and I have been talking about this week, this is when you really love the world of TikTok and social media, is when people start breaking down these movies and showing things. Like, I haven't seen it yet, but I've seen it. I know what happens, right? And caveat here, if you have not seen Across the Spider-Verse, we are going to go into depth and some spoilers here, so just kind of keep that in mind. But the level of detail in this movie is insane. It is absolutely insane.
Oh, yeah. Even if you just take away how well it links into the Spider-Verse, just looking at the Easter eggs and the references, like since this is a multiverse movie, what was the big multiverse movie of last year? Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
Yeah.
There is a billboard that's like all of the things. I forget. I have to look this up now. It's like all the things, all the time.
Yeah.
And it has a plain bagel on it, which is the opposite of the everything bagel for Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. And that leads into another beautiful connection into the Spider-Verse. Because of the whole bagel gag turns out to be a pivot point that creates the problems of Across the Spider-Verse.
And I always love that scene from Into the Spider-Verse. That entire sequence from when they arrive, actually when they're eating burgers and making their way to that place, I can't think of what the name of it is. Yes. That whole thing, that may be my favorite part of that movie.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I like the St. Elmo's fire when they're swinging because it's kind of like the training montage.
Yeah. No, it's just wonderful. But I loved, and God, you go back and you see some of the stuff coming out on TikTok where they're going, they actually legitimately showed Miles's fate change into the Spider-Verse from something that happened in Across the Spider-Verse. You go back and you watch it and you're like, oh my God, they did.
Yeah. Again, I probably mentioned this when I gushed about it last week, but this movie really looked at Into the Spider. Oh, all of it, always, all over the place. That's the reference.
Okay, gotcha.
In Spider-Verse. But the thing about this movie is it takes those events so seriously, and this isn't just a sequel where it's like, we're going to send Miles on another adventure. He's going to go on an adventure through the multiverse. It's like, no, the things that happened in Into the Spider-Verse had consequences.
Yeah.
And those consequences are becoming even more apparent, and big things are happening because of them, and bigger things are going to happen next year when we get the next part.
I haven't seen the movie, and I'm gushing about it. That's how good this movie is.
You're going to love it. You're going to love it. I really love the fact that this crew took again, this is something that is being attacked with or approached with such love and care. And it wasn't just a mercenary sequel. It wasn't just something they did because the first one made money and wowed people. And I mean, this movie only made $384 million. It won Best Animated. It's had such a legacy that automatically it almost felt like they had to make a sequel. And that can go wrong in so many ways because with the wrong idea, it's just, yeah, we're doing it again. Spider-Man, flip. But this is like, no, there is a deeper story we're going into here, and now we need 2 movies to tell it.
If you do get on TikTok and you want to see some great breakdowns of Spider-Man, and I'm not saying that Mike's breakdown isn't good, just for TikTok world, Straw Hat Goofy is one of the guys that I follow, and he's got some great stuff. So shameless plug there.
Yeah, shameless plug for someone else. That's cool.
Mike Reyes from Cinemablend.com, the official movie reviewer of this show. Are you gonna be all bitchy now?
But again, there is just such a deep community out there, and it has its bad parts too. Because there was a video that went viral about a kid's review of this movie that was just wrong and horrible.
Yeah,
so, you get that with TikTok.
Well, I think it's kind of the Wild West where they can. It's kind of like radio, where I can only go so far in the radio world with stuff because I'm working for somebody, right?
Yeah.
And I think the world of TikTok, with some of that stuff, they can go further into, reviews, theories, thoughts, because it's their time. They're not wasting a company's time. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, it just boils down to that old saying that everyone loves to bring up whether it's mostly when it's bad things that come up. It's like, this site is free.
Yeah.
There's like no investment in money. You're only investing your time. And when you feel so passionately about some of the things that these people like to talk about, you just go in there. And it's like, I'm telling it like it is. I'm speaking my truth. And it's like, cool, but I really wish you would have stepped back and been an editor to yourself.
Yeah.
And thought, okay, what you're just about to say about only 3 white people in Across the Spider-Verse might not be something everybody's gonna, latch onto.
There was.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, there's a TikTok guy who's also on YouTube and stuff. His name's Wrangle Star, and this is completely off the subject, but he's a dude that used to work for I believe the United States Fire Service. Fire protection or something. He got fired because his kid was wearing his work hat in a video and someone threw a stink about it. But anyways, this dude has gotten really interesting in the world of TikTok and social media because he's gone from like, hey, if you're going to buy a shovel, this is a really great shovel to have, or, like an axe, or, hey, if you're going to get a knife, stuff like that, to like warning people about the apocalypse and, these are the robot dogs they might use. If you see this is where the CPU is, and you'll need a round of at least 44 high, something like that. where it's like,
boy.
yeah. It's like, boy, you have had a change of heart, buddy.
Yeah. Oh man.
But that's a conversation
Trevor.
that's a conversation for another time. Mike Reyes from Cinemablend.com on the line with me right now. So Across the Spider-Verse is pretty amazing. Going over to The Flash has not come out yet, but reviews are starting to come out for this movie. We'll get into the official review of it next week. But what are people saying about this so far, Mike?
I've seen a mixed bag of reviews. Some are very enthusiastic, and some are caveating the film with a reaction that basically says, look, this movie, whatever this movie does, it's not enough to rise above the fact that Ezra Miller has done this, that, and the other thing, but it is holding at 73% on Rotten Tomatoes, and that is with 80 reviews. So
Okay.
It's not like Indiana Jones coming out at Cannes and it's like 14 reviews making it rotten. This is 80 reviews so far saying that this is a fresh film. But
I'm so excited for this movie except for Ezra Miller. And
it's-
that's where I'm at it. I want to see everything in this movie. I think it sounds awesome.
I am
The Ezra Miller part is the only part that sticks out like a sore thumb to me. I'm like, I do not want to see this because of Ezra Miller.
Yeah, I am excited to see this movie. I'm excited to see it because I love what they've done with the character
Yeah.
from the word go. And then especially through Zack Snyder's Justice League, like the long full cut. That their character is one of the best and one of the arcs that I loved. And then like my wife and I when we went and saw Spider-Verse last week, they showed the trailer, and every time I see that trailer next to her, I just look at her and said, I wish they weren't such a damn monster, because it would be so much easier to go in and enjoy this movie. But I will set this movie aside from that person's actions, while at the same time not endorsing them and thinking that they're a monster. You can do that. You can go and you can watch a movie, but at the same time, you can fully acknowledge and keep in the conversation the fact that, yeah, this movie may be good, but this person in the outside world is not so good. So by me watching this movie and liking it, I'm not giving them my stamp of approval.
Oh, boy, you know what I just realized? We are
What?
totally on the edge of that conversation next week of people getting torched on social media over liking this movie.
Yeah, and, it's really interesting because up until the screening that happened I think it was this past Monday, that was like the first big wide market screenings for the media. They kept the ending secret. We had people that were out at CinemaCon, and then they showed a version of the movie there. That same version was also shown in earlier screenings that was incomplete. They cut the ending, they cut the mid-credits, the movie abruptly ended, and it was an unfinished product. So now we're going to see that ending next week. And what's interesting is you saw the spoiler that came out in the interviews, right?
Is it that what's his name is now part of DC canon?
So spoilers from recent interviews. Nick Cage's Superman pops up.
Oh, that wasn't what I was talking about. Who did Guardians of the Galaxy? James Gunn.
Yeah.
That he's a part of DC canon now. Is that what I read?
I know he was in an episode of Harley Quinn, if I'm not mistaken. So he may have already been.
Okay. Well, anyway,
canon,
so Nick Cage is going to be in this?
Nick Cage's Superman pops up because long ago he was supposed to play Superman in. This ties into another thing we're going to talk about. Because he was supposed to play Superman in a movie written by Kevin Smith, and I think at one point Tim Burton was going to direct it. At one point Robert Rodriguez was going to direct it. I think it was Superman Lives.
Yeah,
and
it was.
You can see photos of him in the suit and video of him in the suit. There's a whole documentary about it too, and it just never happened. And this is the second time we'll be seeing. We'll hear Nick Cage's Superman because we'll see him in The Flash, but he was also Superman in Teen Titans Go to the Movies, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, but the thing is, this ending is so top secret. I'm wondering if they released the whole Nick Cage's Superman thing to distract people, kind of like they did with Borat, where it's like right before the movie was released, they told you Rudy Giuliani was in it. And then why you keep sitting there wondering why. And then I remember watching the movie, and then what happens in the ending? Borat gives Tom Hanks COVID, and Tom Hanks is in the movie. So it's almost like there's this new strategy that's coming forward for marketing where it's like, okay, we can spoil certain things because it's going to distract people.
Yeah.
And then this other stuff can just drop on them naturally when they see the movie.
Yeah. Well, we'll get your full review next week here on the show as The Flash getting ready to take theaters by speed. Mike Reyes from Cinemablend.com joining me on the line, talk about movies. Leading over to, as you brought up, the Superman, Kevin Smith is doing something cool with that.
Yeah, so he's got a movie theater in Jersey that he bought a theater in his old neighborhood and renamed it the Smod Castle Cinema. Because, he has when he started his big podcasting empire, it was, the Smodcast. And that's basically one of his brands that he nurtures. And he does live events at this theater quite often. Like he literally has weekend showings in movies where it's like, hey, come see a movie with me.
Yeah.
And he's like in the audience watching the movie. And then he's also done things like screenings of his own movies where you get like swag and he's there for a Q&A. But he had a whole talk with George R.R. Martin there. Like it wasn't even a screening; it was more just a live event where they just chopped it up about everything and anything.
Yeah.
So now what's happening is he wrote that script for the Nick Cage movie. So he is now bringing that to his theater on July 29th for a live reading.
That's pretty rad.
And it's going to be him and some of his friends. Like they haven't announced who else is doing it, but Kevin Smith is going to be on hand for it. And apparently there's the longest 1997 draft that he had for this movie.
Side note to that, if you ever get the chance to watch the documentary, The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened, watch it.
Oh, I plan on it. I really want to, just because of the fact that this is my bread and butter. I love digging into earlier drafts, what could have been, what should have been. And especially you look at Superman, there's so many of them. Because between Quest for Peace and Superman Returns, there were so many times that they tried to get that back up and running.
So, did you ever hear the giant spider thing?
Yeah.
So
John Peters, bless his heart.
In the documentary, The Death of Superman Lives. By the way, I was watching it on YouTube one time, and it was like someone tricked me where it was like the documentary, like the first half of it, and then it went into like someone else's home movies of stuff. And I'm watching, I'm like, what the f*** is this? But anyways, I made it through about half of it, and it was one of the most fascinating things I've ever watched. And basically, Kevin Smith goes through and he talks about going to this dude's house. What's the guy's name?
John Peters.
John Peters. And he has to read the script to him out loud. So he reads it, and the guy he's like, if I remember right, he's like laying down, listening to him and stuff. And then he starts bringing up about this giant spider, that it needs a giant spider. They're scary, and it needs a giant spider. While the movie never gets made, he goes on to work on Wild Wild West, and what's at the end of Wild Wild West with Will Smith.
Exactly.
A giant spider.
I love that story. I love that damn story.
So, but no, it's fascinating all around, and I would love to go see this. But like I said, if you get the chance, watch The Death of Superman Lives. It's fantastic, and it tells a great story about this stuff. So, very cool.
Yeah, that's been on my list just because I love documentaries that dig into that stuff.
Mike Reyes from Cinemablend.com on the line. As we get towards the end of this story we saw that kind of came out, or we saw right before we started recording, Mission Impossible 8 might be affected by the writer's strike.
Yeah, so it looks like, based on a report coming out of Empire magazine, the movie is 40% complete. This is it's currently set for a March 2024. No, it's currently set for next June. I'm thinking Spider-Verse again. It's currently set for next June to be the other half of Dead Reckoning, which part 1 opens in July.
Yeah.
And these movies have already been a hit with so many delays due to the pandemic and production shutdowns and what have you. So now it looks like Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 2 is shut down in production. And again, like only 40% of it is filmed. That doesn't count all the other work they're going to have to do in post-production. And I could just imagine the anger and the stress that may be building right now, because we saw how Tom Cruise reacted to the COVID shutdowns, and people, there were cases on set and they had to shut down.
We saw his reaction to Oppenheimer last week. We talked about it.
There's that too. There's just so much 4D chess that's going on right now in terms of, and I was talking about this with some people. It kind of sucks that July is becoming so crowded, especially in those weeks with Mission Impossible and then Oppenheimer and then Barbie. It's like you've got people that want people to go back to the movies, but at the same time, the competition is kind of running like nothing ever happened. And now I get that it's a business. I get that they are all competing with one another, but it's still not at full strength. And there used to be more consideration and more like thought as to releasing things in the early days, like maybe we don't crowd this so that way Barbie doesn't eat Oppenheimer's lunch, or that's going to be the real interesting case to watch, is how Barbie does affect Oppenheimer. Because ever since these two were announced to be coming out at the same day, there's been all the memes, and it's like either you're on one side or the other, or I'm one of the people that's like, I'm doing the double feature. I'm watching Oppenheimer first, and then I'm going to watch Barbie to undepress myself. But it's just been such a talk, and I'm a fan of Christopher Nolan's. I think Oppenheimer looks amazing. I know that he really likes to keep July as like the time he releases his movies. Like July release dates have been his thing. But I don't know why you release Oppenheimer in the summer when you really should have released it in the fall, closer to award season, where people are going to appreciate it more, and that's going to be more towards the voters.
What his last movie was Tenet, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Boy, he does some heavy material.
And that was even a big deal, just because of the fact that was playing, it was playing games with the fact that theaters weren't open to a certain extent, but he wanted to get that movie out and up and running as soon as possible. And that ended up coming out in September.
Yeah. Interesting. Boy, this writer's strike, like every time you think like the news kind of dies down on it, something else comes up with it,
Oh, I don't think it died down at all.
Well,
I mean, this is something that is very much present and updating consistently.
I really don't mean this in a bad way, but like regular news cycle, it kind of comes and goes if you're not in the industry. You know what I'm saying?
No, yeah, up until the point that people see things like, oh, we're going to be running movies on broadcast TV again because we don't have shows to. That
actually, you know what? That for the regular person, and I'm not saying that it hasn't affected them already, because, like late shows and all that are in, reruns and stuff because of this. But at what point do you really think it'll start to be noticeable to the general public?
When their shows don't come. I mean, it may not be that noticeable during the summer. I mean, it does seem like interesting timing for the writer's strike to happen, because this is the summer where, not a lot of scripted shows go on, like unless they've already been written, or a lot of reality and reruns. Well, I don't know if they still do reruns, but alternative programming rules during the summer. And then I think if this continues to the fall, that's when you start to see it really hit.
And again,
if we get a deal before the go on.
All I was going to say is, and again, I'm not saying that I'm not in favor of the writer's strike and what they're fighting for, because I do think, they deserve I think they deserve better.
Equal pay and benefits.
Yeah. Exactly. It's not. I'm not saying I'm against that at all, but I mean, from a regular person, just everyday person who watches this stuff, it is, one of those ebb and flow things where you'll hear something about it, like it'll come up, like Mission Impossible 8. That's a big part of this, and then it kind of ebb and flows and it goes away and then it kind of comes back. But that's interesting that it could be fall before people really start to notice it.
I mean, people may have already noticed it just because of the fact that when the strike went dark, the first thing that went was shows like Saturday Night Live, all the late night shows, Last Week Tonight. I remember the first week my wife and I are logging on to HBO, and I was like, cool, Last Week Tonight. Wait, why isn't it on here yet? And then it took about a half an hour, and then I finally remembered,
writer's strike. Yeah.
The writer's strike just kicked in, and these are the shows that need that depend on writers. It's not like a series where, you write a whole season at once, or you write a whole season in a compressed amount of time, and then you've got it.
Yeah.
Like, this is every week, everybody goes into that writer's room, looks into the news of the day, or every day when it comes to late night, and it's like, okay, what's hot? What are people talking about? How do we clown on that?
Yeah.
I mean, if you didn't notice by now, it's probably going to be until, I'm trying to think of a show that isn't current, like not until Will Trent or something on network doesn't come back in the fall. I might have to start up in January if there's a deal before then, or if this continues to the lengths that previous strikes have gone to, it's going to be a while.
Mike Reyes from Cinemablend.com joins me every Friday on the show to talk about movies. Mike, we'll leave it there for this week. Okay? All right?
Something actually just broke.
Okay. Something actually just broke. What's up?
The Iron Sheik has passed away.
You know what? One of my buddies legitimately just wrote me about that.
Yeah.
The Iron Sheik, a professional wrestler, mainly 70s and 80s. He's a name that if you're into the wrestling world, you know who the Iron Sheik is.
Yeah, and it's just wild because you look at his Twitter, and he's been big on Twitter. And
He's
just
awesome
a
on
lot
Twitter.
Of fun. His last tweet is the wildfires.
And that's totally
like
him.
14 hours ago, he tweeted that.
Wow.
That's life for you, man. That is
The
mortality in a nutshell.
The Iron Sheik, like at some point, he's just like, when it comes to Twitter, he's like, F it, let's just whatever, let's go.
And that's been so wonderful to behold and to read. And it's sad, but at the same time, that's a fitting, that is a fitting tribute to the man.
Yeah.
And to the mythos that he built. And man, I mean, you've already got R.I.P. Bubba trending right now.
You know what I just thought of?
What?
WWE SmackDown is in Des Moines this coming Friday. We're going to the show. I wonder what they'll do for Iron Sheik.
That's a good question.
That could make that show really
is that
interesting
the next
now.
event that's happening?
Huh?
Is that the next event that's happening?
Yeah, that's their next televised event. Well, their big one.
Yeah.
They may have I don't know when NXT is, but yeah, they could have. Yeah, that'll be coming up this Friday.
Yeah. As we're recording it, passed away at the age of 81.
Crazy. To the Iron Sheik, we wish you nothing but the best in the great beyond. Mike Reyes from Cinemablend.com joins me every Friday on the show to talk about movies. We'll leave it there. Mike, you have yourself a great weekend, okay?
You as well, man, and don't forget to roll out responsibly.